The meditation center smelled like eucalyptus and rain when Maya unlocked the front doors at 5 in the morning, her bare feet silent against the bamboo floors as she prepared for the retreat that would change everything. She had built Stillwater Point from nothing over the past 6 years, transforming an abandoned mountain lodge into a sanctuary where people came to find themselves again. The property sprawled across 12 acres of pine forest in Northern California, with guest cabins circling a main hall that featured floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the valley below. Maya had designed every detail herself, from the meditation cushions she had hand-sewn to the walking paths she had cleared through the woods. At 28, she had finally created the peaceful life she had always imagined, far from the chaos of her childhood in Los Angeles where her parents had fought constantly, and money had been the source of every argument. She lit candles in the main hall and arranged fresh flowers on the altar, moving through her morning routine with practiced grace. This week's retreat was already fully booked with 12 attendees, and she had reviewed their intake forms last night. Most were the usual seekers: burnt-out teachers, divorced mothers looking for healing, young professionals questioning their paths. But one application had caught her attention. Julian Cross had left most of the form blank, providing only his name, age of 32, and a brief statement that simply read, "I don't sleep anymore." Maya understood insomnia. She had battled it for years before discovering meditation, lying awake night after night listening to her parents scream about bills and debt. Now she slept like a child, peaceful and dreamless, and she wanted to share that gift with others. The first attendees began arriving at noon. Maya greeted each one personally at the entrance, helping them carry their bags to their assigned cabins and explaining the schedule. No phones, no computers, no watches. 7 days of silence broken only by guided meditation sessions, gentle yoga, and optional one-on-one consultations. Vegetarian meals served 3 times daily in the dining hall. Sunrise practice at 6, evening meditation at 8. Julian arrived last, driving up in a black Range Rover that looked too expensive and too clean for the dirt road leading to the retreat center. Maya watched from the main hall as he parked and sat in the driver's seat for a full 5 minutes, his hands gripping the steering wheel like he was still deciding whether to stay. When he finally emerged, she saw a tall man with dark hair that needed cutting, wearing jeans and a gray t-shirt that probably cost more than her entire wardrobe. He had the kind of face that belonged in magazines, all sharp angles and strong jaw, but his eyes were what struck her. They were brown and completely exhausted, ringed with shadows that spoke of weeks without real rest. Maya walked out to meet him, her long skirt swaying around her ankles. She had put her auburn hair up in a loose bun, and she wore no makeup as usual. She knew she looked younger than her years, small and slight at 5'3", but she had learned to project calm authority when guiding retreats. "Julian," she asked, extending her hand. He looked at her for a moment, and she watched something shift in his expression. Surprise, maybe, or confusion. He shook her hand, his grip firm and warm. "Yes, you're Maya. Welcome to Stillwater Point." She smiled at him, noting the tension in his shoulders, the way he held himself like he was braced for impact. "How was the drive?" "Long." His voice was deep and rough with tiredness. "I almost turned around 3 times. What made you keep going?" He glanced at the meditation center, taking in the peaceful buildings and forest backdrop. "Desperation, honestly." Maya appreciated his directness. Too many people came here wearing masks, pretending everything was fine when they were falling apart inside. "Come on. I'll show you to your cabin and then you can rest before dinner. We don't start the official program until tomorrow morning." She led him down a stone path to cabin 7, the one furthest from the main hall. She always put the most restless guests in this cabin because it was the quietest, surrounded by old-growth pines that muffled sound. Inside, the space was simple but comfortable. A bed with white linens, a small desk, a bathroom with a stone shower. Large windows looked out into the forest. Meals are at 7, noon, and 6, Meyer explained, setting his welcome packet on the desk. This evening is free time. Explore the grounds if you want, or just rest. The dining hall is the building with the green roof. Julian stood in the center of the cabin looking lost, like he had landed on another planet. How many people are here? 12 guests this week, including you. Plus me and 2 staff members who handle the kitchen and maintenance. She moved toward the door, then paused. Julian, whatever brought you here, you made the right choice. I know it doesn't feel like it yet, but you're safe now. Something flickered across his face, vulnerability breaking through the exhaustion. Thank you. Maya left him alone and returned to the main hall to prepare for the welcome dinner. Her assistant, Grace, had already started cooking in the kitchen, filling the air with the scent of roasted vegetables and fresh bread. Grace was 62, a former nurse who had attended one of Maya's retreats 3 years ago and never left. She had become both helper and surrogate mother, providing the steady presence Maya had never had growing up. Is everyone settled? Grace asked, stirring a pot of soup. Yes, the last guest just arrived. Maya began setting the long dining table with simple ceramic plates and cloth napkins. The one who left his form mostly blank, Julian Cross. He seems like he's hanging on by a thread. Grace made a sympathetic sound. Lot of that going around these days. Everyone running so fast they forget how to stop. At 6 o'clock, the guests gathered in the dining hall. Maya had arranged the seating to encourage mixing, placing Julian between a yoga teacher from Portland and a recently retired accountant. She sat at the head of the table and welcomed everyone, explaining that tonight they could talk freely since the silence would begin tomorrow morning. Stillwater Point exists to help you reconnect with yourselves, Maya said, her voice carrying easily through the room. For the next 7 days, you'll be unplugging from the noise and urgency of regular life. Some of you will find this uncomfortable at first. That's normal. Sit with the discomfort, breathe through it. On the other side is something precious, your own presence, your own peace. She watched Julian as she spoke. He was looking down at his plate, pushing food around with his fork but barely eating. The other guests were nodding, engaged, but he seemed somewhere else entirely, trapped in his own thoughts. After dinner, Maya offered to give a short tour of the meditation hall for anyone interested. Most of the guests were tired from traveling and headed to their cabins, but Julian followed her across the grounds as twilight settled over the valley. She unlocked the hall and switched on soft floor lighting that illuminated the space without harshness. This is where we'll practice together, she said, gesturing to the room. Meditation cushions were arranged in a circle around a simple altar holding a Buddha statue, candles, and flowers. The walls were bare wood, polished to a warm glow. Have you meditated before? No. Julian walked to the windows, looking out at the darkening forest. I've never been good at sitting still. What do you do for work? Maya asked, joining him at the window. He was quiet for a moment. I run a company. We manufacture renewable energy components. Solar panels, wind turbine parts, battery systems. Started it from scratch 10 years ago. He laughed without humor. Everyone told me I'd fail. Instead, I built it into something worth $300 million. Last month we went public. Stock price tripled in 2 weeks. Meyer absorbed this information. She had known he was wealthy from the way he carried himself, the expensive car, the designer clothes. But this was different. This was massive success, the kind that should have made him happy. Congratulations. Is it? I can't feel anything anymore except this constant pressure in my chest. I wake up at 3 in the morning and can't get back to sleep because my mind won't shut up. I've seen doctors. They want to give me pills. I don't want pills. I want to figure out why I feel like I'm drowning when I have everything I ever wanted. His honesty took her breath away. Maya turned to face him fully, seeing the pain he was trying to hide. You've been running toward success for so long that you forgot to ask yourself what it was for. Maybe. He met her eyes and she felt something pass between them, a recognition that startled her. Or maybe I just don't know how to be satisfied, how to be enough for myself. That's what we'll work on here. Maya's voice was gentle. Not achieving or producing or proving anything, just being. Just breathing. Just existing as you are without the accomplishments and the money and the status. That sounds terrifying. It is, at first, but then it becomes the most freeing thing you've ever experienced. They stood in the meditation hall as darkness fell completely outside, and Maya found herself acutely aware of Julian's presence beside her. He was tall enough that she had to tilt her head back to look at him, and she noticed details she hadn't registered before. The faint scar above his left eyebrow, the calluses on his hands suggesting he didn't just sit behind a desk, the way he smelled like cedar and something clean and masculine. She felt an unexpected pull toward him, a desire to ease his suffering that went beyond her usual compassionate concern for retreat participants. We should get back, she said, stepping away to create distance. Tomorrow starts early. Julian followed her out of the hall. They walked in silence toward the cabins, their footsteps crunching on the gravel path. When they reached the fork where she would turn toward her private cottage, he spoke again. Maya, why do you do this? Run a meditation retreat, she considered the question. Because I know what it's like to feel trapped by circumstances and pain. Meditation saved my life when I was 22 and ready to give up on everything. Now I want to help other people find that same freedom. What were you trapped by? Trauma from childhood, poverty. A sense that I'd never be more than my worst experiences. She smiled softly. Turns out none of that was true, but I had to learn to sit with myself long enough to see it. Julian nodded slowly, something shifting in his expression. I hope you're right, that it works, I mean. Give it a real chance, stay present, that's all I ask. Okay. He looked at her with those exhausted eyes, and Maya felt her heart contract with empathy and something more complicated she didn't want to name. Good night. Good night, Julian. Maya walked to her cottage feeling unsettled in a way she hadn't experienced in years. She had worked with hundreds of retreat participants, many of them attractive, successful, interesting people. She had never felt this immediate connection, this pull toward someone. It was inappropriate, she told herself firmly. He was here to heal, and she was here to guide that process. Nothing more. But that night, lying in her bed listening to the wind move through the pines, Maya found herself thinking about Julian's hands and voice, the vulnerability behind his expensive clothes and success story. She thought about him alone in cabin 7, probably lying awake again, his mind racing. She wanted to help him, yes, but she also wanted to know him, to understand what had driven him to build an empire and why it had left him so empty. She fell asleep eventually, dreaming of dark eyes and strong hands reaching for hers across darkness. The bell rang at 5:30 the next morning, signaling the start of the retreat schedule. Maya rose and dressed in loose linen pants and a tank top, braiding her hair back. She walked to the meditation hall in the pre-dawn dimness and prepared the space, lighting candles and incense. The guests arrived slowly, wrapped in blankets and sweatshirts against the mountain cold, finding their cushions in the circle. Julian was the last to enter. He looked like he hadn't slept at all, his hair disheveled, wearing rumpled clothes. He sat on his cushion awkwardly, clearly unsure what to do with his long legs and restless energy. Maya rang the singing bowl 3 times, the sound reverberating through the hall. "Close your eyes," she said softly. "Bring your attention to your breath. Notice the inhale, notice the exhale. When your mind wanders, and it will, gently bring it back to the breath. That's all meditation is, coming back, coming home to this moment over and over." She guided them through 45 minutes of sitting, occasionally offering reminders to relax their shoulders, soften their faces, release tension. She watched Julian struggle, his body rigid, his jaw clenched. Every few minutes he would shift position or open his eyes, frustration clear on his face. Maya understood. People who had spent their whole lives doing and achieving often found meditation excruciating at first. The stillness felt like failure. After the sitting, they moved through gentle yoga as the sun rose, casting golden light through the windows. Maya led them through simple stretches designed to release stored tension in the body. She demonstrated each pose and then walked around the room, offering gentle adjustments. When she reached Julian, she placed her hands on his shoulders to guide them down from his ears. "Breathe," she whispered. "You're safe." She felt him exhale shakily beneath her touch, some of the armor cracking. Their eyes met for a brief second, and Maya felt electricity race up her arms from where her palms pressed against his shoulders. She moved away quickly, continuing around the circle, but her skin tingled where she had touched him. Breakfast was eaten in silence, a practice that would continue through the week. The guests sat at the long table passing dishes of oatmeal, fruit, yogurt, and granola without speaking. Maya observed them from her seat, noting who seemed comfortable with the quiet and who was struggling. Julian ate mechanically, his gaze distant. After breakfast, the guests had free time until lunch. Some returned to their cabins to rest. Others walked the forest paths or sat by the creek that ran through the property. Maya was in her small office in the main hall catching up on administrative work when she heard a knock. Julian stood in the doorway looking desperate. "Can we talk?" "Of course." Maya gestured to the chair across from her desk. "How are you doing?" He sat down heavily, running his hands through his hair. "I can't do this. I'm sorry, I know I just got here, but I can't sit still like that. My mind is completely out of control." "What's happening when you try to meditate?" "Everything." His voice was raw. "Every business decision I need to make, every email I haven't answered, every person I've disappointed. It's like a hurricane in my head. And under all of that is this feeling that I'm completely alone, that everything I've built doesn't matter, that I don't matter." Maya leaned forward, her heart aching for him. "Julian, that hurricane is exactly why you're here. You've been running so fast for so long that you've never had to face what you're actually feeling. Now that you've stopped, it's all catching up with you. How do I make it stop? You don't. You let it be there. You watch it like weather passing through. The thoughts, the feelings, the fear, none of it can hurt you if you don't fight it." He laughed bitterly. "That's insane. I know it sounds that way. But fighting yourself, trying to control every thought and feeling, that's what's exhausting you. Meditation isn't about making your mind peaceful. It's about making peace with your mind exactly as it is." Julian looked at her with such intensity that Maya felt exposed, seen in a way she wasn't used to. "How did you learn this? Really?" Maya hesitated, then decided he deserved honesty in exchange for his own. "When I was 22, I had a complete breakdown. I was working 3 jobs trying to pay for college, sleeping 4 hours a night, barely eating. I had no family support. My parents were addicts who had disowned me when I moved out at 18. One day I just collapsed. Ended up in the hospital with exhaustion and malnutrition. A social worker there recommended meditation, and I thought it was the stupidest thing I'd ever heard, but I was desperate enough to try. What happened? It took months before I noticed any change, but slowly I started sleeping better, eating regularly. The constant anxiety that had been my baseline for years began to ease. I realized I had been living like I was in danger every second of my life, and meditation was teaching me that I was actually safe, that I could stop running. Julian absorbed this, something in his expression softening. You built all this from that experience. I wanted to create what I needed when I was at my worst, a place that felt safe and peaceful, where people could learn what I learned without having to break down first. You're younger than I expected, he said. When I signed up for this retreat, I pictured someone older, more guru-like, I guess. Maya smiled, disappointed. No, his gaze held hers, surprised and impressed. This place, what you've created, it's remarkable. Thank you. She felt warmth spread through her chest at his praise. Now, are you going to stay, or are you going to keep running? He exhaled slowly. I'll stay, but I need help. Individual sessions, maybe. The group meditation is overwhelming. I can do that. Meet me at the hall at 4 this afternoon. I'll work with you one-on-one. Relief washed over his face. Thank you, Maya. After he left, Maya sat at her desk trying to refocus on her work and failing completely. Her mind kept returning to Julian, to the pain in his eyes and the strength it took for him to admit he was struggling. She had helped many people over the years, but something about him was different. She felt invested in his healing in a way that went beyond professional care. The rest of the day passed in the usual retreat rhythm. Lunch, afternoon meditation, free time. At 4 o'clock, Maya walked to the hall and found Julian already there, sitting on a cushion with his back against the wall. Ready, she asked, as I'll ever be. She sat across from him, close enough that their knees were almost touching. Tell me about your company, not the success parts. Tell me what it felt like to build it. Julian looked surprised by the question. It felt like survival. I grew up middle class, nothing fancy. My dad was a high school teacher, my mom was a nurse. Good people, loving parents. But I watched them struggle every month to pay bills, stress about money constantly. I swore I'd never live like that. So I worked my way through MIT, graduated top of my class, and started developing renewable energy technology in my apartment. I barely slept, barely ate. I just worked. What were you afraid would happen if you stopped? He was quiet for a long moment. That I'd end up like my parents. Not that there's anything wrong with what they did, but I wanted more. I wanted security, freedom. And you have that now. I have money, but I don't feel secure or free. I feel trapped by responsibilities and expectations. Everyone wants something from me. My employees need jobs. My investors want returns. My family wants me to be happy, which somehow feels like the biggest pressure of all. Maya nodded, understanding. You built a golden cage. Exactly. He met her eyes. How do I get out? First, you have to figure out who you are without the cage, without the company and the money and the achievement. We'll do that through meditation, but in a way that works for you. Close your eyes. He did, his body still tense but slightly more relaxed than this morning. Bring your attention to your body. Notice where you're holding tension. Don't try to release it, just notice it. My shoulders, my jaw, my stomach. Good, now breathe into those places. Imagine your breath flowing to your shoulders, your jaw, your stomach, bringing them oxygen and space. She watched him breathe, his chest rising and falling. Minutes passed in silence. Then, slowly, she saw his shoulders drop slightly, his face soften. What are you noticing? She asked quietly. It hurts. Not physically, but like there's a weight on my chest, like I'm sad and didn't know it. Maya's throat tightened with emotion. This was the breakthrough, the moment when the armor cracked enough to let real feeling through. Stay with it. Let yourself feel sad. It won't destroy you. They sat together as Julian breathed through whatever he was experiencing, his eyes still closed. Maya watched a tear slide down his cheek, then another. He didn't try to stop them or wipe them away. He just sat there, finally letting himself feel what he had been running from. When he opened his eyes 15 minutes later, he looked different, lighter somehow despite the tears. That was intense. You did beautifully. Maya meant it. She had watched hundreds of people struggle to access their emotions, but Julian had been brave enough to go there immediately. How do you feel? Exhausted, but also, I don't know, clearer, like something shifted. It did. You let yourself be vulnerable. That takes more courage than any business deal. Julian wiped his face with his sleeve, looking embarrassed. Sorry, I don't usually cry. Don't apologize. Tears are just energy releasing. They're healthy. He looked at her with an expression she couldn't quite read, something between gratitude and wonder. You're an unusual person, Maya. So are you. The words came out more intimate than she intended, and she felt heat rise in her cheeks. She stood quickly. Same time tomorrow. Yes, and Maya, thank you, really. She nodded and left the hall, her heart beating faster than normal. This was dangerous territory, she knew. She was developing feelings for a retreat participant, which broke every professional boundary she had. But as she walked back to her cottage in the fading afternoon light, Maya couldn't deny what she felt. She was drawn to Julian in a way that went beyond wanting to help him. She wanted to know everything about him, to understand what made him laugh, what he dreamed about, how his mind worked when it wasn't trapped in anxiety. The evening meditation that night was calmer. Julian still struggled to sit still, but Maya noticed him lasting longer before shifting position, breathing more deeply. After the session ended and the guests headed to dinner, he approached her. That was better, he said simply. It will keep getting easier. They walked to the dining hall together, not speaking but comfortable in the silence. Over dinner, Maya found her eyes drifting to him repeatedly, watching how he moved, how he interacted with the other guests when they broke silence for the meal. He was kind, she noticed. When the woman next to him dropped her napkin, he picked it up for her without hesitation. When someone asked about his work, he answered humbly, deflecting praise. Beneath the exhaustion and anxiety, she was seeing someone genuinely good. The week developed its own rhythm. Morning meditation, yoga, breakfast, free time, afternoon practice, dinner, evening sitting. And every day at 4, Maya met Julian in the meditation hall for private sessions. She guided him deeper into his own experience, teaching him to observe his thoughts without believing them, to feel his emotions without being overwhelmed. On the 3rd day, he told her about his fear of intimacy, how he had never had a serious relationship because he was always too focused on work. I've dated, he said, but I never let anyone close. As soon as it starts feeling real, I find a reason to end it. I tell myself I don't have time for a relationship, or that they want me for my money, or that I'm not ready. Truth is, I'm scared. Of what? Maya asked gently. Being known. Being seen as something other than successful. What if someone sees the real me and decides I'm not enough? Maya wanted to reach out and touch his hand, to tell him he was more than enough, but she kept her professional distance. The real you is the only you worth being. Everything else is performance. On the 4th day, Julian told her he had slept 6 hours straight for the first time in months. I woke up at 3 like always, he said, grinning with more life in his eyes than she had seen yet. But instead of lying there panicking, I did the breathing practice you taught me, and I fell back asleep. It felt like a miracle. It's not a miracle. It's you learning to work with yourself instead of against yourself. Maya felt joy rise in her chest at his progress, pride in his courage to keep trying. On the 5th day, they were walking the forest path after their session when Julian said, "I don't want to leave. Not the retreat, I mean. I know I have to leave that. But this feeling, this peace. I'm afraid I'll lose it the second I go back to my real life." "You won't lose it if you maintain the practice. Meditate every morning, even just 20 minutes. Stay connected to this feeling." "Will you help me set that up? Maybe we could do phone sessions or something." Maya hesitated. Normally, she didn't work with clients outside of retreats, wanting to maintain clear boundaries. But the thought of not seeing Julian again after he left felt wrong, incomplete. "We can figure something out." They stopped walking, standing on a wooden bridge over the creek. Water rushed beneath them, clear and cold from mountain snowmelt. Julian leaned against the railing, looking at her with an intensity that made her breath catch. "Maya, I need to tell you something." Her heart started racing. "Okay. Being here working with you, it's changing me. Obviously, the meditation is helping, but it's more than that. You make me feel like I can be honest about who I am. Like I don't have to perform or achieve or prove anything. I just get to be myself, and that's acceptable. More than acceptable. I haven't felt that way since I was a kid." "Julian," she said softly, knowing where this was heading and not sure if she should stop it. "I know this probably breaks some rule, and we can wait until after I leave if we need to. But I have to tell you that I'm developing feelings for you. Real feelings. And I hope, maybe you feel something too." Maya looked at him, at his handsome face and vulnerable eyes, at the man who had arrived broken and was slowly becoming whole again. Every professional instinct told her to shut this down, to maintain boundaries, to protect both of them from complication. But her heart was screaming something entirely different. "I do feel something," she admitted. "From the first moment I met you, actually. But Julian, you're in a vulnerable place right now. You're going through major changes. I don't want to take advantage of that." "You're not taking advantage. I'm a grown man making a conscious choice. I've never felt this way about anyone, Maya. I know it's fast, but it also feels right in a way nothing in my life has felt right in years." She wanted to kiss him so badly it hurt, wanted to close the distance between them and let herself fall into whatever this was, but she forced herself to think clearly. "Let's wait until the retreat ends. 2 more days. If you still feel this way when the week is over and you're back to regular consciousness, then we can explore it." "Okay," Julian nodded, disappointment and respect both visible on his face. "Okay, I can wait 2 days, but Maya, this is real for me. I'm not going to change my mind." They walked back to the main hall in charged silence, and Maya spent the rest of the evening trying to focus on her other guests while her mind spun with possibility and fear. She had built her entire life around being calm and grounded, around helping others find peace. Falling for Julian felt like diving into chaos, thrilling and terrifying in equal measure. That night, lying in bed, Maya let herself imagine what it could be like. Dating him, learning his rhythms, building something real with someone who understood her values. But she also imagined the complications. His demanding career, their different lifestyles, the fact that they had only known each other 5 days. It was crazy to feel this strongly this quickly, except it didn't feel crazy. It felt inevitable, like they had been moving toward each other long before they met. The 6th day, Julian threw himself into the group practice with new energy. He sat through the morning meditation without fidgeting once, his breathing deep and steady. During yoga, Maya caught him watching her demonstrate poses, his gaze appreciative but respectful. At their afternoon session, they barely talked about meditation techniques. Instead, they shared stories from their lives, filling in the gaps of who they were. Julian told her about growing up in Oregon, about his love of hiking and camping that had been lost when he became consumed by work, about his younger sister who taught elementary school and worried about him constantly, about his parents who still lived in the same modest house he'd grown up in and refused to let him buy them anything extravagant. Maya told him about her difficult childhood, about discovering meditation at rock bottom, about the slow process of building Stillwater Point, about her dream of eventually expanding to offer longer programs, maybe even training other meditation teachers, about her love of early morning hours when the world felt fresh and possible. "I want to be part of that future," Julian said suddenly. "Not just as someone who attends retreats, but as someone in your life. I want to support what you're building." "Let's take it one step at a time," Maya said, but she was smiling, warmth flooding through her. On the final evening of the retreat, Maya led a closing ceremony in the meditation hall. All 12 guests sat in a circle with candles, and she invited each person to share one thing they were taking with them from the week. When it was Julian's turn, he spoke clearly. "I came here because I thought something was wrong with me. I thought if I could just fix my mind, fix my inability to sleep or relax, everything would be okay. What I learned is that nothing was wrong with me. I just forgot how to be human, how to feel, how to connect. This week gave me that back, and I'm grateful." His eyes found Maya's across the circle. "Deeply grateful." After the ceremony, the guests mingled and exchanged contact information, breaking the silence with laughter and excited conversation. Several people approached Maya to thank her, to tell her how the retreat had helped them. But she was hyper-aware of Julian across the room, both of them waiting for everyone else to leave. Finally, the last guest headed to their cabin. Grace was cleaning up in the kitchen, and Maya knew she had at least an hour before her assistant would head home for the night. She looked at Julian. "Walk with me." They went outside into the dark, following the path to the meditation hall by moonlight. Inside, Maya lit a few candles and they sat on cushions facing each other like they had every afternoon. But this time felt different, charged with possibility. "It's been 2 days," Julian said. "Well, technically not until tomorrow morning when everyone leaves, but close enough. And I still feel the same way, more actually." Maya took a deep breath, letting herself acknowledge what she had been holding back all week. "I'm falling for you, Julian. It scares me because it's so fast and because we're so different in many ways, but I can't deny what I feel." He reached out and took her hands, his touch sending electricity through her nervous system. "We're not that different. We're both people who rebuilt ourselves from difficult places, who value authenticity and growth, who want something real. Your life is in San Francisco, mine is here. San Francisco is 2 hours away, and I'm the boss. I can work from anywhere some of the time. Maya, I'm not going to pretend this will be simple. My schedule is insane, and I'm still figuring out how to maintain the peace I found this week in the middle of my regular life. But I want to try, with you, if you're willing." Maya looked at their joined hands, at how right it felt to have his skin against hers. She thought about all the reasons she should say no, should protect herself, should keep her life simple and uncomplicated. Then she thought about the feeling in her chest when she looked at him, the way he made her want to be brave. "I'm willing," she whispered. Julian smiled, really smiled, and it transformed his face completely. He leaned forward slowly, giving her time to pull away, but Maya met him halfway. Their lips touched softly at first, a question and an answer. Then deeper, Julian's hand coming up to cup her face, Maya's fingers threading through his hair. The kiss was everything, tender and passionate, familiar and new, exactly right. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Julian pressed his forehead to hers. "I'm going to do this right. Date you properly. Introduce you to my family, Build something real." "I'd like that," Maya said, her heart full. They stayed in the meditation hall for hours, talking and kissing and making plans. Julian would return to San Francisco in the morning but come back the following weekend. They would take things slowly, learn each other's rhythms, navigate the complications of their different lives. But underneath all the practical concerns was absolute certainty. They had found something rare and worth fighting for. Over the next 3 months, Julian and Maya built a relationship that defied both their expectations. He came to the retreat center every weekend without fail, helping with maintenance projects and sitting in on meditation sessions. Maya watched him transform from the exhausted, anxious man who had arrived that first day into someone more grounded and present. He meditated every morning without fail, maintained boundaries at work, and slowly restructured his company to be less dependent on his constant involvement. He hired a chief operating officer to handle day-to-day management and cut his work hours from 80 per week to 50, which he admitted still sounded insane but felt sustainable. He started hiking again, bringing Maya to trails throughout Northern California. He reconnected with his sister, his parents, and old friends he had neglected during his years of single-minded work focus. Maya, in turn, found herself opening up in ways she hadn't since her early 20s. She let Julian support her dream of expansion, though she was careful to maintain her independence and not let his money solve all her problems. When the retreat center needed a new roof, Julian offered to pay for it, and Maya compromised by letting him contribute half the cost as a gift. She was learning to accept help without losing herself, to be part of a partnership without sacrificing her autonomy. She met his family on a sunny Sunday in September. His parents, Robert and Linda, were exactly as he had described. Warm, kind, salt-of-the-earth people who clearly loved their son but worried about his well-being. His sister, Emma, was a spitfire who interrogated Maya thoroughly about her intentions before declaring her approval. "You're good for him," Emma said, pulling Maya aside while Julian and his father were grilling vegetables in the backyard. "I've never seen him this relaxed, this happy." "He's good for me too," Maya admitted. "He reminds me that I'm allowed to want things for myself, not just for others." Julian integrated into Maya's life with surprising ease. He got along well with Grace, helping in the kitchen during his weekend visits and charming the older woman completely. He fixed things around the property that had been broken for months, installed better lighting in the cabins, and even led a meditation session once when Maya had to handle an emergency with a guest. But it wasn't always smooth. They had their first real fight in October when Julian suggested Maya could reach more people if she franchised the retreat concept, opening Stillwater Points in multiple locations. Maya felt like he was trying to turn her healing space into a business empire and accused him of not understanding what she had built. Julian got defensive, saying he was just trying to help and that she was being stubborn about growth. They didn't speak for 2 days, both stewing in hurt and anger. Then Julian drove to the retreat center at midnight, let himself in with the key she had given him, and woke her up by climbing into her bed and holding her. "I'm sorry," he said into her hair. "You're right. I was treating your dream like a business problem to solve instead of respecting what you've created and why. I won't do that again." Maya turned in his arms, tears on her cheeks. "I'm sorry, too. You were trying to help, and I shut you down hard instead of explaining why that approach doesn't work for me. I'm not used to having a partner, to considering someone else's input." "We'll figure it out," Julian promised. "We'll mess up and apologize and do better." That's what real relationships are. They made love that night with an intensity born of conflict and resolution, learning each other's bodies the way they had been learning each other's hearts. Afterward, Wrapped in her sheets as dawn approached, Julian said, "I love you, Maya. I think I've loved you since that first night when you told me I was safe." "I love you too," she whispered back, the words feeling both enormous and simple. "So much it scares me sometimes." "Me too. Best fear I've ever felt." As autumn turned to winter, they settled into a rhythm that worked. Julian came to the retreat center every weekend, and Maya went to San Francisco twice a month, staying in his apartment that overlooked the bay. She met his friends, successful entrepreneurs and tech people who were perfectly nice but lived in a world very different from hers. She felt out of place at fancy restaurants and cocktail parties, but Julian never made her feel like she needed to be anyone other than herself. For Christmas, Julian surprised her by arranging a 2-week vacation to Costa Rica, where they stayed in an eco-lodge and practiced yoga on the beach each morning. On Christmas Eve, as they watched the sun set over the Pacific Ocean, Julian got down on one knee in the sand. "Maya, you've changed my life in every way that matters. You taught me how to be present, how to be vulnerable, how to be real. You showed me that success means nothing if I'm too disconnected to enjoy it. I want to build a life with you. I want to wake up next to you and meditate with you and support your dreams while you support mine. Will you marry me?" The ring was simple and beautiful, a single diamond on a platinum band. Maya looked at it, at Julian's hopeful face, at the ocean stretching endlessly before them. She thought about how far they had both come, how much they had grown together in just 6 months. It was fast by conventional standards, but it felt right in every cell of her body. "Yes," she said, laughing and crying at once. "Yes, absolutely yes." They married in May at Stillwater Point, surrounded by a small group of family and friends. Maya wore a simple white dress and walked barefoot down an aisle of pine needles to where Julian stood waiting in a dark gray suit. His sister was his best person, and Grace stood with Maya. They wrote their own vows, promising to support each other's growth, to maintain their individual practices and dreams while building something together, to choose love even when it was difficult. "I promise to let you be exactly who you are," Julian said, his voice thick with emotion. "And to keep becoming who I'm meant to be, right beside you. I promise to remind you that you're enough, exactly as you are," Maya said, tears streaming down her face, "and to let myself be loved fully and without reservation." They honeymooned in Japan, visiting Buddhist temples and meditation centers, soaking in hot springs and eating incredible food. Julian was different from the man who had arrived at her retreat almost a year ago. Lighter, more present, genuinely happy. Maya watched him sleep peacefully each night and felt profound gratitude for whatever force had brought them together. When they returned, they began the process of truly merging their lives. Julian didn't want Maya to give up the retreat center, and she didn't want him to give up his company. So they found a compromise. They bought a house halfway between Stillwater Point and San Francisco, a beautiful property with land and views that could serve as their home base. Julian would work from home 3 days a week and commute to the city the other 2. Maya would continue running the retreat center with Grace's help, spending 4 days a week there and 3 at home. It required careful coordination and flexibility from both of them, but it worked. They built a meditation space in their new home, a small structure in the backyard with windows on all sides. Every morning at 6, they sat together for 30 minutes, starting each day grounded in silence and breath. It became the foundation of their marriage, that daily practice of showing up and being present. A year after their wedding, Maya expanded Stillwater Point to offer training programs for aspiring meditation teachers. Julian supported the project financially but stayed in the background, respecting Maya's need to maintain ownership of her vision. The first cohort of students was small, Just 5 people, but Maya poured herself into teaching them everything she knew about creating safe, healing spaces. Julian continued to evolve as a leader, bringing mindfulness practices into his company culture. He instituted meditation rooms at all their facilities, offered yoga classes to employees, and brought Maya in to teach workshops on stress reduction. The company thrived under his more balanced leadership, growing steadily without the frantic, unsustainable pace of earlier years. 2 years into their marriage, they decided to start trying for a family. It took several months, and Maya was surprised by how emotionally challenging the process was. She had always been so in control of her body and her life, and the uncertainty of conception made her anxious. Julian held space for her fears without trying to fix them, and his patience reminded her why she had fallen in love with him. When she finally got pregnant, they were both overjoyed and terrified. They converted one of the bedrooms in their home into a nursery, painting the walls a soft green and filling the space with natural wood furniture and soft blankets. Julian read every book on parenting he could find, approaching fatherhood with the same intensity he had once applied to business, until Maya laughingly told him to relax and trust the process. Their daughter was born on a clear October morning, arriving 2 weeks early but healthy and perfect. They named her Sage, honoring both the healing plants Maya loved and the wisdom they hoped to cultivate in their child. Julian cried when he held her for the first time, overwhelmed by love and responsibility in equal measure. "We made a person," he whispered, staring at Sage's tiny face in wonder. "A whole person. We did." Maya touched her daughter's impossibly small hand, feeling something shift in her heart, expanding to accommodate even more love than she thought possible. "And we're going to raise her to know she's enough, exactly as she is." Parenthood was harder than either of them expected. The sleepless nights, the constant needs, the way their entire lives reorganized around this tiny being. But it was also profound and beautiful in ways that surprised them both. Julian was a natural father, patient and attentive, changing diapers and doing midnight feedings without complaint. Maya watched him sing to Sage and felt her love for him deepen into something almost unbearable in its intensity. They maintained their morning meditation practice as best they could, sometimes sitting together, sometimes taking turns while the other watched the baby. Maya returned to work at the retreat center part-time when Sage was 3 months old, bringing the baby with her and letting Grace dote on her granddaughter figure. Julian restructured his schedule again, working from home 4 days a week so he could be present for his daughter's early months. When Sage was 6 months old, they hosted a gathering at Stillwater Point to celebrate her naming ceremony. Family and close friends gathered in the meditation hall, now holding a chubby, happy baby instead of stressed-out seekers. Julian spoke about how becoming a father had cracked his heart open in new ways, teaching him depths of love and fear he hadn't known existed. Maya talked about wanting to raise a daughter who knew she was worthy simply because she existed, not because of what she achieved or produced. "We want to give you what we had to find for ourselves," Maya said, looking down at Sage in her arms. "Peace, presence, the knowledge that you belong in this world exactly as you are." As Sage grew from infant to toddler, the rhythm of their lives continued to evolve. She was a calm, observant child who seemed to absorb the peaceful energy of the spaces she inhabited. By age 2, she would sometimes sit on a cushion next to Maya during morning meditation, staying still for surprisingly long stretches. Julian joked that they were raising a tiny Buddha. Maya continued expanding her teacher training program, which had grown to accommodate 20 students per year. Former students, opened their own meditation centers across California and beyond, creating a network of healing spaces that extended Maya's vision far beyond what she had originally imagined. She published a book about her approach to meditation and trauma healing, which became a surprise bestseller and brought more attention to Stillwater Point. Julian's company went through several more growth phases, and he learned to navigate success without losing himself in it. He brought Maya to industry conferences and company events, proud to introduce her as his wife and partner. She brought him to meditation retreats and teacher trainings, where he continued his own practice and supported her students. They were different people operating in different worlds, but their core values aligned perfectly. On their 5th wedding anniversary, they returned to the beach in Costa Rica where Julian had proposed. Sage stayed with Julian's parents for the week, giving them rare time alone together. They spent their days swimming and reading and making love like newlyweds, remembering who they were as individuals and as a couple beyond their roles as parents and professionals. "Do you ever regret it?" Maya asked one evening as they watched the sunset. "Giving up the single-minded focus on work, I mean. You could have grown the company even bigger if you hadn't pulled back." Julian pulled her closer, his arm around her shoulders. "Not for a second. I'm happier now than I ever was when I was building the empire. I have you, I have Sage, I have a life that feels meaningful beyond just making money. The company is successful enough. I'm successful enough. We're enough." Maya smiled, hearing her own words reflected back to her. "We are enough." "Besides," Julian continued, "I got the best part of that frantic, driven version of myself. I got desperate enough to find you. Everything else is bonus." They talked about having another child, about maybe adding to their family in a year or two. They discussed Maya's dream of writing more books, of maybe developing an online program to make meditation accessible to people who couldn't afford retreats. They talked about Julian's desire to shift more of his focus to the renewable energy advocacy work he was passionate about, using his success to influence policy and accelerate the transition away from fossil fuels. Their life wasn't perfect. They still argued sometimes about balancing work and family, about how to handle difficult decisions, about whose turn it was to deal with a toddler tantrum. But they had built a foundation strong enough to weather the challenges. They had learned to communicate, to apologize, to choose love even when it was hard. They meditated together every morning, reminding themselves to stay present, to breathe, to come back to what mattered. On Sage's 3rd birthday, they threw a party at Stillwater Point with all the people who had been part of their journey. Julian's family, Maya's students and staff, friends from both their worlds. Grace made an elaborate cake, and Sage's face was covered in frosting within minutes. Julian caught Maya's eye across the celebration, and they shared a smile of perfect understanding and gratitude. That night, after the guests had left and Sage was asleep, Julian and Maya walked the forest path to the meditation hall. It was the same route they had walked that first week when everything was new and uncertain, when Julian had admitted his feelings and Maya had asked him to wait. Now, 5 years later, they stood in the same hall where they had first kissed, where they had gotten married, where their daughter had been blessed. "Thank you," Julian said, pulling Maya into his arms, "for seeing me when I was broken, for teaching me how to put myself back together, for building this life with me." Maya looked up at him, at the man who had walked into her retreat center lost and had found himself, had found her, had found them. "Thank you for being brave enough to show up, for doing the work, for loving me the way you do." "Always," he promised, kissing her softly. "For the rest of our lives." They stood together in the meditation hall, wrapped in each other and in the peace they had created together. Outside, the forest rustled with night wind, and somewhere in the distance, an owl called. The retreat center Maya had built from nothing now held their whole story, the beginning of Julian's healing, the start of their love, the foundation of their family. It was exactly what she had always wanted, though she hadn't known it until Julian showed up and changed everything. Years later, when people asked how they had met, Julian would smile and tell them about the meditation retreat that saved his life. Maya would add that she had known from the first moment something was different about him, that he was someone who would matter. And they would both agree that the best decision they ever made was choosing to be vulnerable, to be real, to be brave enough to build something true together. Their love story wasn't perfect or simple. It was complicated and messy and required constant work. But it was theirs, built on a foundation of meditation and mindfulness, of two people who had learned that real peace comes not from having everything figured out, but from being present with whatever arises, from choosing each other every single day, from remembering that they were enough, together and apart, exactly as they were. And every morning, as the sun rose over the mountains and painted the valley gold, Maya and Julian sat together in silence, breathing in rhythm, starting another day of the beautiful, difficult, extraordinary life they had created. Their daughter would eventually join them, sitting on her own cushion, learning what her parents had learned the hard way. That stillness is not emptiness, that peace is not passive, that love is not about perfection, but about showing up fully and honestly for another human being. This was their happily ever after. Not a fairy tale ending, but a daily practice of choosing presence, choosing vulnerability, choosing each other. It was better than anything either of them had imagined possible, and it had started with a desperate man arriving at a meditation retreat, and a woman brave enough to see him as he truly was. Julian Cross, the millionaire who had lost himself in success, had found peace for the first time with Maya Chen, the meditation teacher who had built sanctuary from trauma. Together, they had created something neither could have built alone, a life of purpose and presence, of love and growth, of two individuals becoming something greater without losing themselves in the process. And every time Julian sat down to meditate, closing his eyes and bringing his attention to his breath, he remembered that first session when Maya had whispered, "You're safe," and he had finally begun to believe it. He was safe. He was loved. He was enough. And so was she. And so was the life they were building, one conscious breath at a time.